of the economic reconstruction and recovery plan to rebuild our economy. The President is focused on ensuring that South Africa's bilateral and multilateral engagements contribute in advancing partnerships for growth and development in South Africa and to global solidarity, security, and inclusive prosperity. On the bilateral side, as most of you will know, the President returned last night from a state visit to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. President Ramaphosa is pleased with the outcome of the visit, which has cemented already strong trade bilateral ties between the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the Republic of South Africa. Just to take you through a few highlights, 17 memoranda of understanding were signed. It's important to recall that a significant investment has already been made in South Africa by Aqua Power, which flows from the 2018 $10 billion investment commitment. More exchanges are planned in the area of tourism. His Royal Highness the Crown Prince has expressed a desire to see more growth in the economic ties. And just before we departed Saudi Arabia, the President visited the Lulu hypermarket, where over 500 products from South Africa were on display, which was a further testament to the growing trade relations. This company, the Lulu Group, put up a very visually stimulating and fantastic Proudly South Africa display, which will raise interest and demand in the consumption of South African products, not only in Saudi Arabia, but in the rest of the Middle East. We did issue a statement last night, if you need more information on the visit. As you came through the Union buildings, you must have noticed that the Union buildings is a hive of activity. That's because the President will be welcoming His Excellency Mr. Brahim Ghali, the President of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, tomorrow. On the 18th of February 2022, President Brahim Ghali met with President Cyril Ramaphosa on the margins of the AU European Union Summit in Brussels, where President Ghali expressed his wish to visit South Africa between May and June 2022. Subsequently, President Ramaphosa invited President Ghali to pay a state visit to South Africa on the 16th of August 2022. However, due to clashes with the 42nd SADC Ordinary Summit, the visit had to be rescheduled to the 18th, which is tomorrow. The primary objectives of this visit are to give a strong political signal that South Africa will continue to demonstrate its commitment to the right to self-determination of the Sahrawi people, and that South Africa's position on Western Sahara remains unchanged and resolute. Further strengthen and consolidate the fraternal relations between the two countries, and to exchange views on recent developments related to the question of Western Sahara, including the mobilization of regional, continental, and international support towards finding a sustainable resolution to the Western Sahara conflict, in line with the provisions of the 1991 ceasefire agreement. And finally, the purpose of the visit, or the primary objective of the visit, is to call on the AU Peace and Security Council and members of the United Security Council to have a common position and continue stressing the importance of the resumption of direct negotiations. South Africa's unwavering support for the self-determination of Western Sahara is based on the following principles: the principles of multilateralism and international legality in seeking a just and lasting and mutually acceptable political solution which will provide for the self-determination of the people of Western Sahara, the centrality of the African Union and the United Nations in the resolution of conflict, the constitutive act of the African Union, in particular the principle of the sanctity of inherited colonial borders in Africa and the right of the peoples of former colonial territories to self-determination and independence. the respect of international human rights law in the occupied territories, notably the right to freedom of association, assembly, movement, and expression. The respect of international humanitarian law and support of the provision of humanitarian assistance to the Sahrawi refugees in a way that is predictable, sustainable, and timely. An end to the illegal exploration and exploitation of the natural resources of the Western Sahara in the illegally occupied territory, and the discouragement of the involvement of foreign companies in such activities. And finally, the support of the integration and stability of the Maghreb Union as a building block of the African Union. So that will be tomorrow. On Wednesday, the President will be chairing a cabinet meeting, and then on Thursday, the President will proceed to visit the Northern Cape, starting with, on Thursday, the 20th of October, with a visit to the Redstone Concentrated Solar Power, CSP, thermal plant. The Redstone Concentrated Solar Power thermal plant forms part of the South African Renewable Energy Independent Power Producer Program, REIPPP. The 100 megawatts Redstone CSP project was awarded preferred bidder status in 2015 under the bid window 3.5, 1.2. The Renewable Energy Independent Power Producer Program is aimed at bringing additional megawatts into the country's electricity system through private sector investment in wind, biomass, small hydro, among others. The 100 megawatts Redstone CSP thermal plant will supply clean energy to more than 400,000 people per day and over 100,000 households per year. The 11.6 billion rands Redstone CSP project is enabled by Aquapower. Redstone, it's actually a Saudi Arabian company, and we had the benefit of interacting with their leadership while we were in Saudi Arabia, as well as their chairman, who had the benefit to engage with the president. The project is a strategic partnership with South African co-investors, including the Central Energy Fund, the Pellet Green Energy, and the Humansras Community Trust. There's also a number of other funders that are involved in the project. On Friday, the President will host a presidential imbizo from 9 o'clock in the morning to 2 o'clock in the afternoon at the Mxolisi Dickie Jacobs Stadium in Uppington, which is part of the ZFM district in the Northern Cape. Over and above the assessment of service delivery, the President will be briefed on progress being made under the district development model, the catalytic projects that are underway and being planned for the region, as well as interacting with communities in the area. More details on the program will be provided during the course of the week. And on to a topical issue of the Ministerial handbook. President Ramaphosa has ordered the withdrawal process of the Presidential Minute on the Executive Members Guide, commonly known as the Ministerial Handbook for 2022. The withdrawal will give effect to the 2019 version of the Executive Guide pending a review. President Ramaphosa acknowledges and appreciates the public sentiments on the matter. However, the impression created that the amendments were conducted in secrecy and to avoid public scrutiny is false. I don't know how many of you must have seen the story that was published this morning on News 24, which we responded to, but some of our response did not find expression to that story, and the headline was somewhat, with all due respect, a bit sensational and misleading, and I'd like to just cover a few points on this story. It is important that we emphasize the position of the President with respect to the News 24 story on a certain Mr. Maumele and his cozy relationship, as claimed by News 24 with the President. And we do find the headline misleading, And the President's position on the matter is as follows. To the extent that Mr. Maumela is the son of the President's ex-brother-in-law, the President has no further knowledge of Maumela, nor has he ever had any relationship with him. Beyond being cousins, the President's son, Cyril Ramaphosa, has no close ties with Maumela. In the exercise and fulfillment of his constitutional powers, the President remains duty-bound to always act in accordance to the Constitution and his oath of office. This it does without any fear or favor. Proclamations are never signed on the basis of individuals involved. The Special Investigating Units and Special Tribunals Act number 74 of 1996 sets out guidelines in which the President may exercise his powers. The President considers each and every application by the SIU on its merit, and he will certainly sign such a proclamation should the SIU, as it so often does, motivate for the need for such an investigation. Rarely has any president refused an SIU request for an investigation. It will be extraordinary for President Ramaphosa not to sign a proclamation. The President does not have any knowledge of Mr. Maumela's business dealings. Neither was he aware of his involvement with the Tembisa Hospital or any other state entity. As stated, the President has no relationship with Maumela. And lastly, the President still maintains the position that immediate action should have been taken by the Gauteng provincial authorities in dealing with the maladministration that Ms. Babita Deokaran flagged and in providing her with the necessary protection. The President expects law enforcement agencies to conduct the investigations without any fear or favor, regardless of who may be involved, and to arrest those who were party to malfeasance and in the murder of Ms. Deokaran. I think I'll end there for now, colleagues, and open the floor to questions. I do recognize most of the faces, but as standard, the introductions will not hurt. Tando, you have your hand up.
Hello, it's Tando Mayeko from Business Day. Vincent, I would like the President's views on the current impasse between unions and management at the ports and rail operator Transnet. The strike has entered its second week. Nothing is moving at the ports. Unions are not backing down on their demands, and we might just be headed for a fuel crisis as well, because nothing is moving at the ports. What does the President think should happen in this regard? And just as a note, because of the impasse between the unions and management at Transnet, I think it's another example of there being a lack of a social compact between labor and business. Therefore, there we have this impasse. So I would like to ask that social compact question. When is it being drafted? What's the update on that? Thank you.
So it's two questions. Okay, thank you, Tando. And Natasha?
Natasha Puri here from SABC News. Just three questions. As a follow-up to the Ministerial handbook, I don't know if you're aware that the Democratic Alliance had a press briefing earlier on today, and they have filed a complaint with the Public Protector calling for the abolition of the handbook. It's in its entirety. Just a reaction from you on that. Also, perhaps on Eskom-related issues, which is quite topical, since the appointment of the new board, do you know that, or are there performance contracts maybe for the new Eskom board? And then lastly, on the 19th, President Cyril Ramaphosa will be opening the Association of World Electoral Bodies in Cape Town. and South Africa is actually going to assume chair. The IEC is going to assume chair. Just your reaction on that. Thank you.
The world election bodies.
Yes, electoral bodies. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. Muluku?
Thank you, Mkulua. Muluku Mloto from ENC. I have 3 quick questions for you. Is the president getting regular updates from Eskom? And I'm asking this in view of this rolling blackout, whether he has accepted that that's a reality, but importantly, whether he still supports the CEO, whom we know other people have said he needs to step aside.
Sorry, just.
Does the president still back or support or have faith in Andrew de Ruyter as the CEO of Eskom? And on the issue of the Ministerial handbook, as much as he has withdrawn it, but the question is, why did the president not anticipate the public outcry, given the fact that a lot of South Africans are going through a difficult time? The food prices high, petrol prices are high. They're just going through a rough patch. Millions of people have lost jobs due to COVID, and the economy is simply not generating more opportunities. Why did the president miss that opportunity to anticipate that this is going to cause a problem? Lastly, I'm not too sure if you're at liberty to tell us what would be on the agenda.
This is the 4th question, yeah?
Yeah, what would be on the agenda for, is it Wednesday's cabinet meeting? What would be key issues up for discussion there?
Okay, great. Should I just take those 3 and we'll go for another round? Oh, you want? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's Govan Whittles from Newsroom Africa. You said that the review is pending of the Ministerial handbook. Again, do you have any timelines on when that will be implemented? And when is the President going to submit his plan for the implementation of the State Capture Report to Parliament? Thank you.
Okay. All right. Okay. So let's start with Thando. Thando, the President is being constantly updated on the developments related to the strike at Transnet. There is a team of ministers that are working together in accelerating the resolution of the strike. Since Sunday, there were daily meetings with a business forum that has been established for information sharing purposes. Transnet has been assistant to mobilize the CCMA, as you know. There have been extensive engagements with both recognized unions by ministers on Wednesday last week. And really the focus is on finding a settlement urgently, avoid the huge impact on the rest of the economy, as you've alluded, and the potential loss of jobs, ensure that there is adherence to picketing rules, as well as no violence and damage to assets. In that regard, also ensure that should that eventuality occur, the police are on standby to act accordingly. You call it an impasse. I'll call it a process that's currently underway that the President would like to see accelerated and would like to see reach a final settlement as quickly as possible. The President has been briefed that a revised offer was tabled on the 13th of October. Balloting has started with one of the unions. Satau has been consulting from Thursday. And so our anticipation and expectation is that we will soon be reaching some kind of settlement. The impact on the economy is devastating, as you know. We want to avoid scenarios such as shortages of fuel, etc. We already have enough pressure in the economy with, load shedding and other issues. So the sooner this process is concluded, the better. We will also hope that all the parties will act in the interest of the country and in the interest of the sustainability and growth of our economy. You also asked about the social compact. That process is underway. There are, and I won't get into the details, but there are several sticking points that have delayed that process, primarily between government and business to a large extent, even though it's a process that involves other stakeholders. I don't think it's fair or accurate to say the cause of the strike at Transnet is due to the absence of the social compact. As you will know, South Africa will regularly have these cycles of labor action. And those labor disputes are well within their rights in terms of the legal and constitutional framework. So I won't attribute the strike to the absence of the social compact. More broadly, there is an understanding and commonality amongst all social partners with respect to what needs to be done to achieve the objectives of the country's economic reconstruction and recovery plan. There are minor differences in terms of specifics, but there isn't a crisis or there isn't a huge gap with respect to what do we all need to do to accelerate the country's economic growth. Natasha, I wasn't aware that the DA had filed a complaint with the public protector. What I heard on the news on my way to the union buildings was that they had demanded that the president scrap it or else they will march to Ministerial estate, which I kind of found unnecessarily dramatic. But suffice to say, on Friday, prior to our departure to Saudi Arabia, I spoke to ENCA and Newsroom Africa to confirm that the handbook, as it currently is, will be reviewed. I've just confirmed that the President has instructed the withdrawal of the minute that gave effect to the guide for 2022. I'm not certain as to what a PP investigation will achieve in this regard. It's not the first time you have a ministerial handbook that outlines the different support elements to members of the executive. And over the years, the handbook has gone through different iterations. And now it's going to go through a similar process. So we will await that process if the public protector decides to investigate, but I'm not quite sure exactly what it will achieve. Eskom performance agreement, the board is well aware of its mandate. The board is well aware of its mandate as communicated by the shareholder representative on behalf of the president. The board is well aware of the scale and magnitude of the crisis that the country is facing with respect to maintaining a reliable energy supply. So in understanding that mandate and signing on to the responsibilities that they've signed on to, one will take that to be a form of a performance agreement, unless you're asking about individual board members in terms of their performance agreement. I won't be familiar with such a process at board level, to be honest. My understanding is that board members are appointed with respect to a constitutive act, and board members are given a very clear mandate to achieve, and that performance will then be reviewed as regularly as necessary by the shareholder representative, and the appropriate decision will be taken in that regard. With respect to the world electoral bodies, yes, there is that conference next week, where South Africa will assume the chairship. This week, this week, yes. No, the president will not be attending because it's in Cape Town. So the president is here tomorrow for the state visit, remember? And he's here for cabinet, then he's off to the Northern Cape. So unfortunately, the president will not be attending. Yes, Natasha? I'm not. No, absolutely. So I'm not quite sure how the IEC will have reached that conclusion, because I was in communication last week with their head of communications, where I communicated that the president will not attend the event due to the program as I've outlined. The president does understand and appreciate the significance of the event and South Africa's ascendancy to the chairship of the World Electoral Body. It speaks to the high standard of our country's election management, which has been proven over the years. It is further testament to our young democracy having excelled in managing elections both at a local government as well as national, and in also navigating through, since 1994, the various challenges that as a country we've faced in the build-up to elections and during the elections. The president will record a video message which will then be delivered to the IEC for flighting during the conference. So let's not walk away with an impression that the president is snubbing or is missing the significance of the event. That's not the case. The case is we have a state visit that had been long scheduled. I shared the date, which was changed because of the SADC summit. And there's a cabinet meeting on Wednesday. The commitment to the Northern Cape was also established quite a while back. So let's not take away a wrong impression. He does appreciate the significance of the responsibility and does applaud the IEC for the stellar work it has produced over the years. Moloko, regular updates from Eskom. Indeed, the president does get regular updates on the situation with respect to the stability of our grid. You will recall that he announced the National Energy Plan. In that announcement, he announced the formulation of the National Energy Crisis Committee, which is chaired by our Director General in the Presidency, Ms. Pindile Baleni. So through those mechanisms, with respect to his interaction with the minister and other relevant ministers, as well as the work that is currently being undertaken in the National Energy Crisis Committee, the president is well updated. Let me just add that when the president tabled his plan to the nation, he was quite transparent that that plan was not going to overnight rid us of load shedding, but it was a plan that envisages the sustainability of our grid in the sort of medium to long term. So we're talking about a period of 18 to 24 months. And since that announcement, a number of actions have been undertaken to ensure that. Contextually, we will remind ourselves that the reason we are faced with the current load shedding is we have a combination of absence of megawatts due to planned maintenance and a large number of megawatts that we cannot have or utilize due to unplanned outages. As we all know, Eskom teams are working very hard to ensure that those units are returned to service and that we can, at the very least, ease that burden and remain in the sort of lower stages of load shedding with a certain level of predictability as well. Does the President still have faith in Andre de Ruyter as CEO of Eskom? The President still has faith in the management and leadership of Eskom. It will not be prudent to single out an individual at this stage, considering and appreciating the complexity of issues at Eskom as they've been outlined before multiple times. The President has confidence that with the appointment of the new board, the executive management team at Eskom will have the necessary support strategically and will have the necessary guidance that it requires in order to fulfill its mandate. There are multiple stakeholders outside of Eskom, particularly in government, that are involved in assisting and supporting Eskom fix itself. There are stakeholders outside of government who are also coming forward, lending their time and their skills to support the team at Eskom. Did the President anticipate, did he not anticipate the public outcry on the handbook? I think where we are now, we are at a stage where the President has listened. The President appreciates the public outcry in the context of the sort of economic, social pressures that a lot of South Africans are facing. The President is heartened with the fact that we have an active citizenry that on an ongoing basis participates in our democratic processes and sometimes vehemently so disagrees with decisions of government. And I think we can take heart to the fact that the President has ordered the withdrawal of this notice that gave effect to the guide pending a review, simply because he is attuned to the challenges that South Africans are faced with on a daily basis. I suppose with hindsight, we can say the intention behind the amendment was not a nefarious one. The intention was to try and find some form of balance between what ministers could afford to pay versus some of the costs that they have. Pretty much all of them have their own private residences, and by virtue of being ministers, they then inherit 2 official residences. So now you have a scenario where you have costs for 3 homes. Be that as it may, we can no longer further debate that outcry and the merits of that outcry, except to say, let's accept what the public has given us as a message, and let's conduct a necessary review that will ensure that the next version of the guide is aligned to not only public's expectations, but to the realities that many South Africans face. Cabinet agenda, I will pass that on to my colleague at GCIS, Ms. Pumla Williams. She leads the communication of Cabinet. Suffice to say, all the key important issues that government assists with will certainly be on that agenda, but also there will be sort of standard format that Cabinet follows. Govin wants to know the timelines. Govin, at this stage, I'm unable to confirm the timelines, except to say it is a process that the President will want accelerated and expedited and concluded fairly soon in the interest of the public, but also in the interest of the ministers who will need to know and understand what cost they will have to pick up. The state capture implementation plan will be submitted to Parliament as per deadline on the 22nd of October. The provisions currently relate to, the provisions currently relate to the submission of the implementation plan. Should the President see the need to do more than just the submission in terms of sharing elements of that plan with the nation, we'll announce that in due course. That was the first round. Considering how many of you are here, that may be the last round, but I know Gert. Gert, I can't see you. There's a cameraman blocking my line of sight with you. I've answered all your questions. Okay, great. Thank you. I suppose Ngyasha Isaga then. Natasha.
Thank you, Mr. Makwenya. This is a question from our Parliament, our colleagues in Parliament, Uvuyani Green. He's asking, has the President had any communication with Parliament's independent panel? If so, what sort of communication has taken place between him and the panel? Number two, will he cooperate if he is invited or even subpoenaed by the public protector to be a witness in her inquiry? Thank you.
Will he cooperate if he's subpoenaed by who? The public protector in the Section 189 process?
To be a witness in her inquiry.
Okay. Thank you. Chando, did you have your hand up?
Yes.
Okay.
So will the President do a written response or a spoken response as well regarding the state capture recommendations report? The implementation report, I mean.
Will he do what, sorry?
Spoken response, or would it only be written?
It will be a written implementation plan.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Do you have another question, Chando? Is that it? Okay. Mulugu?
All right. Final question from my side is the electoral amendment bill that's before I think the Portfolio Committee on Home Affairs has wrapped its deliberations. But my question is the outcry by civil society groups, and they are also calling on the President not to sign it off. Now, considering the fact that the bill was formulated by the Department of Home Affairs, the Minister having appointed that advisory committee, and decided not to take their recommendations or recommendations of the majority members of that committee. And my understanding is that before it even went to Parliament, it was presented before Cabinet, which we know is being chaired by the President. Now, having passed at that level of Cabinet, which I would presume the President was happy with it, as it went to Parliament for public consultations. Now that it's going to return to the President for him to sign it into an act of Parliament, when with civil society saying that it is fundamentally flawed and it will not even pass the constitutional muster. They are saying the President must actually, some are saying take it to the Constitutional Court so that it can determine whether it's constitutional or not. And I know I'm not too sure if it's before the President's desk, but it passed through his Cabinet. Does it mean that already he was happy with how it looked, and when it returns for him to sign it off, chances are that he will still be happy and sign it off into an act of Parliament despite the public outcry? Thank you.
Govin, yeah, sure.
Thank you so much. It's Govin again from Newsroom Africa. Okay, so with regards to one of the ministers that's been implicated in the state capture report, the Minister of Mineral Resources, has indicated his intention to take the report and review, and yet hasn't filed papers in that regard. Will the President be implementing any sort of consequence management for those implicated that remain in his cabinet? And I'd like to move to the Transnet strike. We heard last week that at least 45,000 pallets of produce from the agricultural sector is either stuck at the ports or along the rails. And the Minister of Rural Development and Land Reform had indicated that the government was planning to assist these farmers whose produce was being affected, their businesses were being affected. Is there any relief plan for these people going to be announced? And then if I may move to Eskom, since the President has been receiving updates on the situation at Eskom, is there any plan to unveil how it deals with the reports of sabotage or the extent thereof? And whether he believes the 75% generation capacity target set by the Department of Public Enterprises Minister is realistic, considering the current generation capacity is below 60% and it hasn't gone up to 75% in maybe 8 months. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Vuyani in Parliament. Has the President communicated with the panel inquiry? The President is awaiting communication from the panel inquiry. Once that communication is received, the President will fully cooperate with that process, as he has indicated. The President has not initiated that communication. The process is the President will be conducted through official channels by the lead in that panel, and the President will respond accordingly. Will the President cooperate to a subpoena? Let's see when that subpoena arrives, and let's see what options the President will choose to exercise. I wouldn't want to speculate. We've communicated on this issue before, and we've said we really don't understand the desire to have the President participate as a witness in this process, because he was not the source of the allegations against Advocate Mkhwebane. This was a process that was started by Parliament, and the President had a constitutional obligation to then respond accordingly to the process. As to why the President will be required to testify or to be a witness, it's still unclear. Maybe the subpoena will have some more details, but as things stand, we will maintain our position as to a view that says there is actually no relevance with respect to the President's participation, except maybe an element of grandstanding from some quarters. However, the President will deal with that subpoena as and when it arrives, and will exercise his rights and options accordingly. Muluk, you got me on this one. I'll have to come back to you, my brother, on the electoral amendment bill. I promise to come back to you. If I need to come to the studio, I'll do that, or I'll speak to my colleagues at Home Affairs to assist with that. I haven't followed that process closely, I must admit. Apologies for that. Govern, some of the ministers implicated are going to review the state capture report. That's all within their rights. That's provided within the law. That you have an opportunity to review a commission's report if you are aggrieved by its findings and recommendations. So those ministers will be well within their right, and that review will be part of the process. It will not be for the first time that individuals that are implicated or mentioned in a commission's findings have taken those legal steps, and those legal steps are provided within the law. Will it delay the finalization of the implementation plan? No, it will not. As you know, some of the findings have already been responded to. I don't have the exact numbers, but SARS will tell you that they've started dealing with some of the tax-related offenses. For example, the NPA will tell you that there are a number of cases that are now on the court roll that flow from Judge Zondo's report. And so already there's work underway there. With respect to consequence management, I suppose until such time those reviews are are instituted and are finalized, it will be premature for the president to embark on any consequence management process. He will have to wait for the outcome of those reviews and take a decision from there. Your last question was sabotage on Eskom. No, Transnet. Do you want to follow up? Sure.
Sorry about that. How long will he give them to actually institute this review? Or is it an open-ended time period where they can take as long as they want to file papers to review the report?
Well, I don't think it's in their interest to take as long as they want. They will want to file those reviews as soon as possible. The president will want them to file those reviews as soon as possible, so that those matters can be concluded as speedily as possible. So it's not a case of just an indefinite period with no end in sight. It will have to have some end in sight in some way. However, he will respect that process nonetheless. With respect to Transnet strike, the pallets for agricultural produce that are stuck at the port, Minister Titiza is part of the ministerial team that's working with other ministers with respect to the resolution of the Transnet strike. At this stage, I cannot say exactly what form the assistance that government will provide to those impacted fresh produce producers, except to say if that is a commitment that has been made, that is a commitment that will be realized. We have quite a vibrant agricultural export market that government continues to support with the leadership of Minister Titiza, and we need to continue that support more so now, and that assistance may vary in nature. It may involve finding ways to speedily get that produce out, or look at the various mechanisms that are available to government. With respect to sabotage, when the president visited Tutua Power Station, part of the delegation included the Minister of Police, Minister Pegicele. There is already work underway from a law enforcement point of view to investigate those cases of sabotage and to get to the bottom of those cases of sabotage. You'll appreciate the complex nature of that environment from a technical point of view, and so those investigations will require a bit of time, except to say we can just give the public comfort that law enforcement agencies are attending to cases of sabotage at Eskom. I think we're good. Natasha looks happy. Queenin, I haven't even heard your voice. Are you okay? Are you good? Really? The Daily Maverick is happy. Oh, well. If you're happy, then I'm happy. Okay, colleagues, I suppose we've reached the end of our engagement. The idea is that we do this more regularly. Please don't commit me to a specific day in the week, although Mondays do look a lot more feasible for a number of reasons. It's the start of the week. We don't often host official events, but we do now and then. And the president attends to his other political commitments. So I'm hoping that next week we will have another session. In fact, the one we're planning for next week will be topic specific around the JET-P. Once I've finalized the availability of those stakeholders who are leading that process. I should have left the podium. The moment there were no further questions.
This is the most simple question.
I should have known to leave the podium.
All right, Mkulua. You know, the media generally complains about the fact that the president isn't, availing himself often. I think we appreciate this opportunity today But can we get a commitment that at least you will drag your boss at least to do this, even if it's once a month? If not with him, at least you come, let's do this thing regularly, so that there can be an ongoing engagement. But preferably, we would like him to be the one who does this.
Kanita? Oh, the quarter has just ended. We're in October, eh? Okay. Yeah. Good question. I'll follow up on that. Let me just make sure I write that down.
And also, if you could just share the response on whether the President stands on the version of the initial handbook with the rest of us as well. It's very, very important. Thank you.
Okay, great. I'll come back to you as to the absence of the amendments from the cabinet statement. Hopefully my colleague Pumla is watching. She's already making a note. And I'll come back to you guys on the electoral amendment bill. On Moloko, on the President's availability, Kanita is right. I had made the commitment that the President will at least be available for an exercise of this nature at least once per quarter. Unfortunately, September and October have just proven to be very, very difficult in terms of a very punishing schedule. So it's more of a program and diary issue rather than the unwillingness on his part or on our part to make him available. If you follow the coverage from state visits or from his international program, you will have seen that we do make him available. Unfortunately, not all of you are able to travel, which we appreciate. Yesterday, he had an engagement with the colleagues that made it to Saudi Arabia. We will have similar exercises with respect to the rest of his international program. Tomorrow, there will be a brief media briefing post the meeting with the President of the Sahrawi Republic. So we'll endeavor to fulfill that promise, Moloko. It will be difficult for me to drag him because that could be a security issue, but we'll certainly endeavor to make him available. And Kanita, thank you for that reminder. So I'll remind my colleagues as well. Okay, let me... Gert. Gert? Yes. Sorry, Gert, there's a phone that was recording here and it's ringing. Should I just hang up? Okay. Yes, I did that at your instruction, not voluntarily.
Well,
Yes,
now I've got the mic. Now there's going to be the mic.
Yes.
There's going to be a lot of political point scoring regarding this withdrawal of the Ministerial Handbook. I see the
Yes.
DA has already said it's because the pressure they exerted at this morning's press conference that the President changed his mind. Would you mind to comment on that, please?
Well, look, the opposition parties will do what opposition parties do. The President did not change his mind because the DA screamed at him from the rooftops. The President listened to the sentiments of ordinary members of the public, and the President accepted that with hindsight, a review is necessary to the Ministerial Handbook. As for the political point scoring, opposition parties are opposition parties, they'll do what they do. The public should just, as I said, take comfort that they have a government that listens. I think we should all take comfort that we still live in a very robust constitutional democracy where citizens are active and citizens are vocal about issues they feel strongly about, and more importantly, that they get a response from their government rather than being ignored. For me, those are the key takeouts. We'll let the opposition do what it needs to do, and from an executive point of view and the president's perspective, he will lead the process that needs to run its course now with that review, and hopefully that process can be expedited as soon as possible, as I've indicated earlier. Thank you. Okay. Natasha, you want me to remain here for cutaways?
Yeah, they can take cutaways.
Okay. Oh, you want me to get off the stage? No, the problem standing here is that Mulugo is going to abuse me, but nonetheless. But thank you so much, colleagues.
But we appreciate this a lot.
Thank you so much. And the commitment is to do it more often. And to be honest with you, I'm catching up on my KPAs here. I was supposed to have started it a long time ago. It was an undertaking I made to the president, and he was quite keen that I do it, as well as the rest of the team in the office. So I'm a few months behind my KPAs, so I needed to catch up.
But also at least if you give us an alert a day or two before so that we can go read those annual reports. Because at this point in time, we really are trying to catch up.
Yes.
Yeah, but I think we generally appreciate it.
No, we will alert you earlier.
I think you were live on all these three TV stations.
Sorry?
No, I'm saying you were live on these three major television stations.
Oh, I see.
So, yeah. If you brought him,
Thank you so much, colleagues.
yeah.
We will. I've made the commitment in public, so I can't renege. I can't renege on that commitment. It's public. Everybody has heard it, so you know.
Thank you.